What's going on, Kings fans? Welcome to the 2017 LA Kings Media Roundtable, brought to you by Mayor's Manor and the Fourth Period. I'm Keith Korneluk.
And I'm Chris Kalaziewski, and we're here with a very special program. We brought together a unique group of people from a variety of backgrounds to talk about the past, present, future of Kings hockey.
So here we go. Enjoy this special roundtable coming up right now. I think we've talked enough about Dwight King because he no longer plays for the Kings. But Dennis touched on this. The Kings have an opportunity to maybe add someone during free agency. Do they do that? Does Rob Blake make any kind of move? If so, what are they looking for? Who are a couple of names that you think might be appropriate for the team?
I just like Brian Boyle, like I said earlier.
I like
your first round pick back.
I'll tell you, I'll go back to the discussion we had about defense and Derek Forward. I'd love to see them sign Carl Alsner and pair him with Doughty. A stay-at-home, solid defenseman, 28 years old, won't be very expensive. I think that will free up Drew. Drew will have a lot more confidence because for next year, I mean, this year he had Forward next to him and Peter Budaj behind him. 60 games or 50 games, right? So next year you got Quick and Carl
That would be huge.
Right?
That would be huge.
Carl Alsner would be a great move.
Amazing.
The other move I want to make, and it wouldn't be free agency, but Carl would be the guy to go after. Benino to a lesser extent, but you might have to pay him $4 million, so I don't think that could fit unless
You can't pay Benino $4 million.
Well, the other guy I would love to see them trade is Tyler Johnson. Put him between Toffoli and Pearson, move a Carter, maybe bounce back. That would be the perfect. Add speed, add skill. With those two guys, I'd love to see that happen.
But then you've got another RFA, right? And so now you've got, then you have Johnson, Toffoli, and Pearson.
One line to all RFAs, but that's the
RFA line.
There you go. That's great. Brian addresses the speed skill. Yes. I would. You know what? Fans would be excited. Let's talk about the fans for a second. I mean, you line up Toffoli, Pearson, and Tyler Johnson. Crap! Wow, that's a really exciting line
for 1 year.
For 1 year. Carter comes around, off the edge with Kopitar, Brown or somebody else. Maybe you maybe trade for Landeskog. I mean, so those are so there are moves they can make that can make this team better.
If you brought in Carl Alsner and you had Alsner and Doughty, Doughty is your 1-2, whoever within, and Alsner on your. You've got 4 shutdown defensemen.
Yeah, I mean, that's a guy we're talking
that would be huge because Alsner is all world, I think.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that, and then everything gets just predicated on what other moves they can make. If you are who you lose in the expansion draft,
right?
Do you move one of the defensemen that we've talked about? Because then the dominoes then just start to take effect, and then you have a clear idea, because if you move Muzzin or Martinez, and then you're bringing in Alsner and you're trading Muzzin and Martinez to get you that help offensively, then it's a lot of ifs.
The one thing that troubles me, and I thought Blake was polished, gave great answers in the press conference. We grilled him pretty hard. We had somebody who's going to be more accessible than Dean. And I like the way Dean did things. I'm like, that's
talk to you in January.
Exactly, right? So the one thing that I'm concerned is that they focus too much on bounce back years by other guys. That maybe they're keeping their plan silent. Maybe they're working on stuff behind the scenes. It was too much bounce back. They talked about Kopitar, Toffoli, and Quick. I credit, but to Brian's point, that's not going to be enough in this league. It's not going to be enough. It'll get them to 95 points. It'll get them bounced out in the first round next season.
But JD is right, though, that the timeline, everything is going to be predicated on what happens before. So who they lose in the expansion draft plays a big part of who ends up getting traded as we go into the draft, right? Because if you lose Trevor Lewis or Nick Dowd, that's totally different than if you lose Dustin Brown, right? And what prospect or pick you might have had to trade to sweeten the deal to get them to take Brown. So the expansion draft plays a huge role. That's going to dictate what they do at the draft in terms of trading players and whether they get a Landeskog or somebody else. And then from there, then you go into free agency. So it's all going to be compressed into a very tight window.
Talk about Kopitar. Speaking of bounce backs, Earl, what happened to Kopitar last year?
I think $10 million.
And C.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't like the way they gave him the C because I think it created problems with Brown, and I'm assuming some players in that locker room was like, this is how they treat our captain. How are they going to treat me?
Yep. Several players in that room were not happy about the way it went down.
Well, it's embarrassing. Even as someone with no inside look into that locker room, it's like, if I were Brown, I'd be like, you guys can suck it. And it probably was weird.
Pretty good guess.
I was trying to clean it up. I was trying to clean it up. And I'm sure it was even hard for Kopitar to take on that position, knowing how certain players felt in the locker room, and you know, $1 million a goal, that's just not good enough. It's $10 million. That's, you know, what 15-20% of your salary cap in one guy or whatever it is. It's just not good enough. Maybe he was hurt. I don't know.
Well, a couple of things. Number one, and just to put it out there, close with the player, talk to him at length. He did not campaign for the captaincy. Some people thought it was part and parcel with that contract. Absolutely, positively not. I think John is also privy to the fact that they were ready to
the organization wanted to give him the C. He wasn't lobbying for the C.
He wasn't lobbying for it. But with respect to Kopitar, you look at the talent that, and I know some people say because of the salary cap, you have to be able to raise the talent around you to pay. But when you put Trevor Lewis and Dwight King next to you, that's not what is supposed to happen. Right? If you look at the guy that scored the most, the player scored the most even strength points with Kopitar this season, it was Marian Gaborik, 14 points. It's not good enough. I'm sorry. When they had Lucic, and I know that it was a bad trade, and Lucic, Kopi and Lucic together on ice, I think, produced more than 3 goals per 60 minutes of play. Right? So they took Lucic away. The guy they really could have used, or now he's, you know, obviously we all know about him, but Justin Williams. He was the guy that understood Kopitar's game
and
the
his
most.
best friend.
Yeah, I mean, so you can't keep going with guys. You know, you're in a playoff race, and you've got, you know, Trevor Lewis and Adrian Kepi with Kopitar.
Okay, but let me respond to a couple of those things.
Go ahead.
One thing is any notion of, well, the Kings should bring back Justin Williams is just fantasy hockey.
Replacement.
Yeah. Okay, so Justin Williams was a time and place, and in hindsight, I don't think the organization valued some of the intangibles off the ice that Williams brought in terms of being best friends with Kopitar and understanding his game and that sort of thing. But they were ready to move on from Justin Williams. Yeah. Justin Williams was never coming back to the LA Kings, and it had nothing to do with money. It had nothing to do with he was not coming back to the Kings. They needed to move on at that particular time, despite what fans think. The second thing is, I disagree that Kopitar should be able to raise the game around him. That's what the best players do.
Exactly.
And look, you go back in history, and Brian was a fan of this team for a long time. He knows Wayne Gretzky made a 30-goal scorer out of Vitaly Yachtronev.
Wait a minute. You're not going to put Kopitar and Gretzky in the same sentence.
Hold on. If you're going to say that Kopitar is one of the top 3 centers or a top 5 center in the NHL, then yes, he is that good, and he's supposed to make players around him better. And while I would agree that it's not his fault and that it is detrimental to put guys like Trevor Lewis and Dwight King and Devin Setoguchi with him, at some point, when you're the #1 guy and you're a top 5 center in the league, you do have to make players around you better.
But they were last in shooting percentage. So don't you think that Darryl Sutter had a lot to do with this? I think it does, because I think Darryl was very rigid with respect to his systems, and you couldn't freelance when a guy like Kopitar, who needs to freelance at some point in time, has to come back and make every play.
Well, you know, that's a good point, because look at when Crosby had I was so horrified by that coach. Who was the coach before Sullivan?
Mike Johnson.
Mike Johnson. And Crosby, same thing. Crosby played horrible. It looked like he didn't even want to be there. And as soon as Johnson left, Sullivan came in. All of a sudden, his game elevated. So maybe
I think
the same thing could have been happening with.
I can't fathom that's going to be the same type of season. I think there's going to be better players around him. But it's not like with Jonathan Taves. People say the same thing about Jonathan Taves in Chicago this year.
But maybe he's freed up by a new coach.
Richard Panik's playing with him, right? So I think that you got to have one legitimate player with him. Not like, okay, I get it. Maybe raise the level, maybe produces a little bit more. But you know Kopitar's not that type of player. He's a European player who passes first, who sets up his players first. So he's never going to, I don't think he's going to score 30 goals. But you got to put one legitimate winger with the guy.
Okay, so final question. What do you do with Marian Gaborik? He's got a clean slate, apparently. He's supposedly going to come back when he's done with surgery. John Davis, what do you do with Marian Gaborik coming in?
Well, you know, it's interesting because when you heard the clean slate, you know, the first thing was that they're giving him a new opportunity, but then, you know, he's got to have surgery, so they can't buy him out. But then I'm told that even if he didn't have surgery, they weren't going to buy him out, and maybe you can still trade him. Maybe you can try to offshoot him to Arizona or New Jersey for 2 teams that are trying to get to the cap floor. To the cap floor. I just don't see, you know, I don't know. This is a guy that many of the players felt quit on them throughout the year, didn't want to be on the ice with them. So, and maybe part of it's Darryl, and maybe John Stevens can bring the offense back into Marian Gaborik. But I don't know. I just don't see that this is a guy that, you know, that.
Look, the firing of Dean and Darryl could play into the buyout as well, because just as recently as 45 or 60 days ago, the buyout was absolutely being discussed and was was the working plan for the summer, as I understood it. So, maybe you have an owner here who's saying, look, I'm paying already a lot of money already for guys that were just fired, and now I'm not going to buy out Marian Gaborik.
I think that, look, it's not about injuries. It's not about the cap. It's not about LTIR. It's about effort with this player. And I agree with John. I had players tell me after games, like, this guy is just not into it. I would give him, assuming he's healthy, from the point in time he plays his first healthy game, I give him 20 games. If he doesn't show me the effort, I waive him. And that's what they should have done last year.
Right.
They get one healthy, I think it was one game he's healthy.
I
would have waived this guy. Maybe somebody picks him up, maybe it wakes him up, but this player has to be woken up at this point in time. And, when you're 34 years old, you make a ton of money, sometimes you coast. This player coasted.
Well, he's always...
All right, Kings fans, I hope you enjoyed that edition of the Roundtable. We've got lots more for you, so tune in to Mayor's Manor and the fourth period. I'm Keith Korneluk.
And I'm Chris Kalaszewski.
We'll see you soon.